Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us here today. And my name is Michael Rebel with Imagine Communications, Director of Solution Architecture in Advanced Workflows in Cloud. And hi, Mike. Thanks for joining and spending some time with us today. If you could introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Mike Kralec. I'm the VP of Technical Operations and the Deputy CTO for Sinclair. Been with Sinclair for a long time and running through a lot of the media technology operations.
Excellent. Appreciate that. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the Sinclair going live with the tennis channel within the cloud. So, now that Sinclair has launched multiple emerging networks channels in the cloud, I don't know, about a year ago with our Versio platform, you and I worked closely on that. And was that a precursor in the beginning? Was it used to build confidence and get comfortable with running cloud, playout channels origination? And was that really the intention behind the emerging networks channels, or was there something else that drove you to actually start wanting to move live events into the cloud?
Yeah, I think we were looking for a transition off our more traditional automation and playout systems with the emerging networks, and so they provided a good platform to, a good group of content, I'll say, to move off of the more traditional automation and playout systems on-prem. They were an environment that was really, because of its national network scope, made more sense. It was sort of compartmentalized for us, and really made a lot more sense for us from scoping what it would mean to move automation and playout to the cloud. Try to eliminate. You don't want to do this with your most complex operations at this point. I'm not saying that it was necessarily a simple process. You and I both know it wasn't. But with respect to the scope of the processes involved, they were more limited than some of our other channels and content. So it was definitely a precursor to this actual tennis channel live events through the cloud. I don't think we could have done it the other way around. I think we sort of see things building on each other, right? We see just almost a video jukebox type of national network. Obviously it's a little bit more complex than that, but the basics of the signaling that we used in that, the basics of the playout, the basics of the media management, all of those were all problems that we solved with those emerging networks, or maybe not even solved, but maybe just learned a little bit more about how it would work, and what operational changes would be required. And so when we got to a requirement for these live tennis channel events, there was a level of comfort there, right? So now it didn't become just have all the do all the media management and solve the problems or learn things on what it meant for ingest and what it meant for transformation in the cloud and what it meant for the distribution in the cloud. We had pieces of this answered. We knew how to get a level of comfort with change management that was going to be required. And I think that's a big part of this overall is, on the operational side, how's it changing for people? So we've sort of got this evolution happening, right? We have just the basics of the playout. Then we have the incorporation of live video into the playout and the signaling and the timing and the latency things that come with that. And then maybe the next step is how do we start to blend small components from remote production? So it really is, an evolution over time as we start to match some of the, business requirements back to the architecture. It's kind of give and take constantly.
Yeah, that definitely, it was a great learning platform, even for us with emerging networks. I learned a ton and enjoyed that whole process. Probably one of my proudest moments was launching those channels in the cloud. So I appreciate that. So now that you guys have run, several tennis channel events, like the Miami Open, the Monte Carlo, and even the French Roland Garros in the Versio platform in the cloud. But before doing that, what was your biggest concern about, now doing live events, within the cloud? And was there any hesitation? And what would that be like? What advice would you give somebody, I guess, doing a live event from the cloud?
Look, I mean, I've said before that the partnership with the content side is a huge part of these being successful, right? Is being able to uh, sort of expand on what the impacts are going to be for their operations, what it's going to mean for them. From a technical perspective, I'd say my biggest concern was, were the pieces that we hadn't learned before, the transport stability inbound and outbound. Some of those things that it's the pieces that change from iteration to iteration that are really my biggest concerns. But making sure that that content, those partners understand how things are going to change, whether that's how they're accessing systems, how they're getting trained on the platform, what their visibility is for monitoring the system and managing the components of the architecture. My biggest concerns are first making sure that it's sort of do no harm. We're always trying to make sure that if nothing else, that we recognize benefits out of moving to the cloud. I think everybody's aware of that. But let's make sure that the benefits aren't overshadowed by misses on change management, on the partnership side of things, making sure that we're delivering just as good of a product now as we are in the future. And that incorporates obviously everything from the stability of systems to environments to being able to manage and monitor those environments. And people have to feel, they have to feel comfortable with it. So those are my biggest concerns.
Yeah, agreed. And I think one thing we learned within the Tennis Channel live events was you're able to have a lot of resiliency across the whole platform, not only from the feeds coming in and working with some of your partners like LTN, having multiple redundant feeds coming in, being able to feed those out to the RSNs, I think is very easy and well architected to do in the cloud, and having that backup system is great. I guess the key thing is partly when you were launching the Tennis Channel live event, what was the backer to actually put this in the cloud? And what I'm asking is, what's the idea there behind these channels, the ability to not just deliver content and not have to put more on-premise hardware, but was it more of a ability to just basically spin channels up and down?
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly it, right? It's the agility that I said it earlier, it's matching business requirements to the architecture, right? It's our ability to we do a certain number of events a year for this. We bring it up for the events. We bring it down right after the events. It is literally building upon the promise of cloud, which is that you have scale when you need it and you don't have it when you don't, right? So you're consuming everything as a services-based ecosystem. And that's that benefits of the cloud. Great. Let's just not, we can't break the content in the process there. So I think you're absolutely right. It's about, if we wanted to add another channel, or it does not take us months anymore to do these things. It takes weeks. I think the longest part of this is making sure that all of the back end work that we have to handle on every project is done, right? All the invoices we know where they're going and who's doing the approvals. And I think it's more licensing and all that kind of stuff than it is architecture and technology nowadays. I mean, from a what's holding you back and slowing you down a little bit. It's more of it sometimes becomes the administrative processes more than it does the technical processes, which is a nice juxtaposition than to how it's been in the past. Things happen very rapidly now, and it's great because we get to we're all technologists. We get to we enjoy playing with the newer technologies, and this rapid iteration means that we're more times in the technical realm than we are the administrative stuff.
So true, so true. And I guess on that same point, in the sense of architecture and technology speed, knowing that we can spin things up very fast in the cloud, was there any features and functionality that you were missing in the cloud that you would get on-prem, or was it pretty equal for the most part?
Yeah, I think that's an easy question. I don't think we missed anything from a functionality or feature perspective. I think, I mentioned it before. We changed how we were handling things, and so it's not really a matter of whether the feature or functionality is missing. I don't think there's anything necessarily missing. It's just we may not take the same path to get to that feature or that functionality.
Great. And then on the operational side, was there any big changes or concerns that were brought up by the operations team or even the on-prem engineering team that's responsible for these channels?
I'll say we didn't. I don't think there's anything major. First of all, nothing that I would say is a big change. I think the teams were used to dealing with latency in the transport. So obviously the latency changes from implementation to implementation, but it's not something that's necessarily is a change so much. It's just a resetting of expectations. I guess the other piece would be how they monitor and how they manage the environment, right? So if, when you're in the cloud, you have a different set of technical capabilities that are required for managing it. People have a different set of skills, for, like you said, bringing things up and bringing things down, right? If we're scaling this, then, hopefully we'll be able to support it ourselves and bring that scale when we need it and remove it when we don't. So I think those are really the major changes. Just the skill sets required and some minor operational changes.
Yeah, definitely agreed there. I think them being able to really just sit back in front of an interface that they're comfortable with, the same switcher panel. The only difference really, I guess, would be them having to access the system, through a workspace for this instance and go through there instead of just sitting right in front of a master control panel that's running 24/7. They actually have to take an extra step to access it, but pretty much operationally it seems to
for those that haven't used AWS workspaces, it feels like your desktop, right? It doesn't really impact, besides the initial login, it doesn't really impact your experience with operating that Playout channel. So yeah, I think it's relatively transparent for the users, and that's good, right? Because that helps, like I said, manage expectations for the content production side.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree. I was pretty impressed with workspaces and being able to drive everything. So I agree there. So one thing is, a question for you would be, what does sports origination and production in the cloud in general look like, and specifically for Sinclair? Where is this, fall? Does this expand more beyond just these pop-up or type channels for tennis, or does it go beyond that? I know Sinclair has a lot of sports channels now, so curious on that.
Yeah, I think, I think mainly the piece for us is going back to iteration. So you've got the video jukeboxes, you've got the national networks, emerging networks. We call them national networks now, but you've got those guys. You've now got the tennis channel. You've got other places where you've got potential for disaster recovery, Playout, things like that. But I think the main focus for the future is how do we move, how do we componentize, how do we move some of the smaller pieces of remote production? How do we iterate it? How do we break down that remote production sort of, I guess, environment? How do we take small pieces out of that? How do we duplicate, button pushes, and how do we duplicate efforts that are happening on-prem to the cloud? How do we minimize disruption and manage expectations? Right. I think the future is just continuing to carve off small pieces of the the production and the origination components, the environment, and move those towards the cloud. But I think the most important part of all of that is going back to those operational changes and the organizational changes that will be required with those operational changes. We don't want to accept changes to the quality of the product, but we may have to accept changes to the process of producing that product. So it goes back to trust and partnerships, and slowly, so as not to do harm, slowly moving those pieces towards the cloud. I mean, I think, look, it's really when we've got something like the tennis channel Playout, where we really do recognize financial benefits for scale up and scale down on a daily, weekly basis. That's easy, right? Now, when you don't have this, very obvious financial benefit necessarily to moving to the cloud, how do you get down to the details that are required to justify the changes? And part of that is minimizing disruption, and part of it's testing and workflows. It's really making sure that we're getting that operational flexibility from the change without having any additional, actually, with having greater resiliency, I'd say, on processes and workflows.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it actually was more, we're getting the national networks up just for the orchestration layer of all the files and assets from all the third-party vendors.
Yeah.
Then getting live feeds in and out, that was actually the easiest part of it all, was doing the live.
The media management is the long pole in the tent.
Exactly. Sure. There's a lot of things that go along with it. So doing the live event Playout was way more simplified and was easier and quicker to get online. But I think we're about out of time at this point. So thanks for spending time with us today, and hopefully look forward to launching some more channels in the cloud with you and with our Versio platform.
Yeah, thank you.
Mike, thanks for the time.
Yep, absolutely.